Good evening. How are we all doing? Thank you for joining me on this Thursday evening. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been on. Had a visit back home, do all the Christmas stuff, you know, get all the family out the way before the next few weeks take shape. They live a good few hundred miles away from me, so we kind of did them all in 5 days. And it was good fun. It was good fun. However, I missed a live stream, and I apologize for that. I couldn't find space to fit one in. But no, we're back tonight. I had hoped to drop another episode of Room 666 as well, because you all seem to like that idea. I'm going to make a few little changes to it, though. You guys seem to think that 5 minutes is too long to build your case, so we're going to drop it down to 3 minutes. Barry was due to join me on, when was it now? Wednesday. And he's got COVID. So we've had to postpone it. Hopefully we'll get it recorded this weekend and that will drop early next week. But everything's ready to go on that. A few other things in the pipeline as well. A few other exciting things. But tonight I thought I'd do the hot takes. I'm not quite ready to do Room 666 live. I want to kind of get it right, exactly right first. And figure out a way of involving you guys in it as well. So that will come. Probably another couple of episodes, couple more pre-records on that, and then we'll jump in and do a live version of it. But yeah, tonight I thought I'd do some hot takes, something I've never done before. Never ever done this before. I've seen other channels do it, and I put it out there earlier in the week and had plenty of responses. And they kept coming, but I had to have a cut-off point. So I've picked 10. 10 fairly, some I agree with, some I don't agree with. And we'll take a look at those, see what you guys think about these hot takes. And also I'll offer my opinion as well. But no, good to see so many of you here at the moment. How many is there of you? 40, 45 at the moment. 46. If you could hit the like button, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, that would be great. I know it's annoying when people ask you to do this stuff, but it really does help the channel. And I'd appreciate it very much. Let's see who's in the chat. Let's see who's in the chat right now. Cosplay Chris is here. Hey Chris, how you doing? Chester's here. Tony Four Eyes is here. Andrew's here. Hey Andrew, how you doing? Alan's here. Physical Media Lives. Met up with Alan in Ireland 2 weeks ago today, I think it was, and we had a good old drink. It was a nice lunchtime couple of pints in Dublin. That was very nice. Shot the shit for an hour or so, and yeah, it was great to meet him. Who else have we got? Brandon Collins is here. Hey Brandon, how you doing? Kingslayer's here. Daz1428. Logan is live. Who else? Deshaun's here. Lots of people here at the moment. Wrath is here. Wraith, how do you pronounce that? Oh, Tony's here as well. Wigan Cult Film Club. How are you doing, mate? Good to see you. Leanna's here as well. Good to see you, Leanna. Dean Renner. Anybody else? Anybody else here? Brandon says, I couldn't think of any hot takes worth offering, so I abstained. Very out of character for me. I thought you did. I thought you mentioned something. Or maybe you just followed up on someone else's hot take. Where's this hype button thing? Yeah, that's a really cool thing that you can do now, or some of you can do. I think they're rolling it out slowly because I have a few YouTube accounts and it's not available, like the TSL YouTube account. I can't hype on that, but yeah, I can hype on OnlySans. I think it's for the smaller channels, I think. So if you have a hype button, click the hype and it really helps. It helps more than a thumbs up. So that's really exciting. And you gain points, and the more you hype, the more points you get, all that sort of thing. Not entirely sure how it works. I don't think I've seen a video yet explaining it all, but I think it's a good thing. It's only a good thing. So yeah, hype the video, folks. Hype the video. Okay, let's move over. Actually, if any of you, before we start, if any of you have got any hot takes you want to drop in the chat, and we'll just do a couple of dry runs beforehand, feel free to do that, and then I'll move over to the other screen and we'll take a look at the ones that I've whittled it down to. couple of things have come in the post over this. A lot of things have come in the post over this last week. Let me just see. I did a Reanimator unboxing, which is there, which you've probably all seen the video of. That's a great edition. I'm waiting for Possession this week, which is really exciting. I got 88 Films is Don't Open Till Christmas, which is a really nice version that they've done. It's only Blu-ray, but I've never owned this before. I think I had a VHS years ago of it. I don't mind this really grotty little grubby British slasher film from around about 1984. I covered it on the slasher, the Christmas slasher video I did. And folks, if you haven't checked that out, please have a look at that, because I've got more of that stuff coming. But I'd really like to get that to 1,000 views. I think it's about 850 or something like that. It's slowly just chugging away in the background. But it took me a lot of time to do it, and I really want to get some eyes on it, because the next one's in preparation at the moment, which is the golden era of slashers, sort of 78 to 84. And I've realized I can't do that in one episode. So I'm going to have to do that across maybe 3 or 4 episodes, maybe a year on each year. Although 78, 79 I might have to do together, because there's not a great deal of, well, obviously Halloween. There's not a great deal of slashers across those years. And When a Stranger Calls is in there as well. But it really doesn't kick in until like 1980. But those will be a few episodes, I think. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into those over the next few days. And I've got plenty of time off over Christmas as well to start churning out some content too. Whoops, I was going to put my address on screen then. Not going to do that. I will open this live. I don't actually know what this is. I ordered something some time ago, and it's come through today. So I thought I'd just kind of rip it open on the channel and just see what it is. It's bound to be a Blu-ray of something. Let's have a look. Oh, it's in a Warner Brothers box. Let me have a look. Ah, it's a steelbook of. That's a great cover. Roller Girl on the cover there. Boogie Nights is such a great film. One of Paul Thomas Anderson's earliest films. I think he did. What did he do first? Was it Bottle Rocket or something like that? And then he did Boogie Nights with Burt Reynolds and Mark Wahlberg. There we go. Really, I haven't seen this in years, but I loved it when it first came out. Great soundtrack on here as well. Stan Bush with The Touch is on here from the Transformers film, and also Night Ranger, Sister Christian, which is a great moment in the film. So really looking forward to diving into that over the weekend. I might do a little video on that. I don't know. We'll see over the next few years. Dean Renner says, Boogie Nights, I should be getting it later this week. Yeah, I ordered that ages ago. I'd totally forgotten it was coming. Some of you might not be interested in this at all, but I'm so excited because tomorrow my Wild Geese box set arrives. It was dispatched today, and I've had a notification saying it's arriving in the morning. It's a real hefty one as well. Book, CD, 4K, everything. If you haven't seen the Wild Geese, you should watch it. Richard Harris, Roger Moore, Richard Burton. Great war film from 1979, I think it was. Contemporary war film at the time, I guess. But yeah, really good fun. Really good fun. Okay, let's see what you're saying in the chat. Let's have a look at this. Yeah, actually, somebody says H4 mask is good. H5 mask is up. Right, okay, so Justin this evening, Justin Grace Goodrich, a lot of you will know him. You know, I've been saying all along, eventually somebody will replace the Myers mask in Halloween 4 with AI. Somebody's done it, and they've put the 78 mask in there. Now, it's only kind of like a few scenes from the film, but it looks bloody good. I'd love to play it on here now, but it probably will cause all sorts of, I'll get dinged and all that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, well, I'll put a link out later on for it. It literally went live about 4 hours ago today, did this guy who's done it. And it looks incredible. You get the sequence where with Bucky in the power station. You get the sequence in the bedroom with Daniel Harris when Michael sits up behind the bed and turns his head, and you can see the 78 mask. It's done so well. I don't know whether they'll do the rest of the film, but from what I could see, there's little test moments. They look terrific. They really do. And maybe, who knows, maybe they'll do Halloween 5 as well. Okay. John Jones said, I saw that today. It looked pretty awesome. I don't know if Brandon can find the link in the chat. Actually, Brandon, let me just send it to you on, I don't have the wherewithal to be able to do it right now in terms of dropping it in the chat, but I'll forward it to you on Instagram, and then you can share it or whatever. Let me just see if that's gone across. Yeah, there it is. Maybe you can share that in the chat for people to have a look at. After the stream, of course. Andrew Steam says, Darren, are you getting the Jaws video game? Is there a Jaws video game coming? I'm not really a gamer, but I do have a PlayStation 5, so I would be interested. Daz1428 says, I love Paul Thomas Anderson, but he is insufferable on the commentary track. What, for Boogie Nights? Really? Okay, that's interesting. I have actually met him. He's a really nice guy, but this was a long time ago. I did a few screenings with him for a film called Punch Drunk Love. Not long after I started work with the company that I'm at. And I spent a couple of mornings with him, and he was really pleasant, but obviously, who knows? Maybe he's insufferable now. I don't know. I hope not. Don Mac 3K says, it's been longer since Boogie Nights was released than it was then back to the era depicted with the yeah, was Boogie Nights was like 97 or something, wasn't it? It's a great film. Really great film. Okay. Did anybody put any hot takes in here? Hot take. Remake of a Craven film is better than the original Last House, Hills Have Eyes, and yes, Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, I'd say I enjoy the remake of Last House on the Left more than I do the original. I enjoy the Hills Have Eyes more than I do the original, but not Nightmare on Elm Street. I do not enjoy that more than the original, but I will agree on the first two. Liana says, has that maybe even a hot take? No, I don't think there'll be many people here that will agree with you on the Nightmare on Elm Street remake being better than the original. Janie, Deshaun says, hot take, Laurie Strode is one of the worst final girls and H2O is the only one way you can call her a final girl. Not a H2O fan. No. Lots of things put me off that film, and I know it's probably going to come up in the Room 666 episode that I do with Barry. He has given me a list of films that he wants to drop in there. Halloween H2O isn't one of them, but another Halloween movie is. And I'm sure one of my counter arguments will be, what the fuck are you talking about? You want to put this in there? And your favorite Halloween film is H2O? Come on. We'll see anyway. We'll see how that goes. It's going to be fun. Andrew says, hype is for smaller channels and can only be done in the first 7 days of the video. Going up puts you on a top 100 leaderboard within the country of origin, allowing more people to find you. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Cool. That probably explains why the Slaughtered Lamb channel doesn't have that facility at all. Paul H says, my Boogie Nights is arriving with Wild Geese soon. And Alan says, Burt Reynolds sadly hated the whole Boogie Nights experience. Didn't he get nominated for an Oscar? I'm pretty sure he did. Boogie Nights is my favorite PTA film, says Brandon, but There Will Be Blood and One Battle After Another are close. Yeah, I think it's mine as well. I honestly do. I think it's great, is Boogie Nights. What else have we got here? Sean, good to see you, mate. Anyone going to see The Shining in IMAX this weekend? Got The Shining in the afternoon and Silent Night, Deadly Night tomorrow night. Busy day. Yeah, I only just heard this weekend that, this week that The Shining was coming to IMAX. There's a kind of gap this week in the release schedule. That kind of, in between, what have we had? Wicked, Zootopia, and we've got Avatar next week. So there's a kind of a bit of a dumping ground week. And I saw that, yeah, The Shining's coming along. I did see Silent Night, Deadly Night last week. Went along to a small screening in London last Tuesday, I think it was. And it was great. I enjoyed it. I thought it was okay. Wasn't amazing, but it's worth a watch. It's worth a watch. I don't want to say too much about it because obviously a lot of you will be going along to see it. But it doesn't quite deliver on the gore like I thought it would. But But Ryan Campbell is great in it. He does that sort of thing really well. Not too far removed from the character he plays in Halloween, which I really liked. Whatever you say about Halloween Ends, it's not Rowan Campbell's fault. He actually puts in a really good performance. But yeah, there's a killer moment in the middle of the film, which they've held back from the trailer. A really cool set piece in the middle of the movie, which you'll know as soon as it happens. It's good. It's very different to the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. I guess the thread's fairly similar, with the kid witnessing his parents being killed, all that kind of stuff. But his motives and his the reasons for what he does, why he does what he does, are totally different to what they are in the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. So I kind of liked it for that. They kind of twisted things a little bit. Okay, right. I think we are ready to go over to this screen here. There we go. Got old unmasked Michael there. I thought that might prompt a few Halloween Ends questions or statements, but it didn't. But let's move on to our first one. And our first one is Friday the 13th. 2009 is number one in the franchise. Well, how do I feel about this? I think it's certainly the slickest the franchise has ever looked. And Marcus Nispel kind of brought a real sort of polished and mean visual style that I guess made Jason look a lot more kind of cinematic than campy, I guess, in the other films. He's an absolute beast in this film. You know, Derek Mears is a real fast, brutal, I guess you'd call him almost like a survivalist or something like that. And I know a lot of fans consider him one of the more threatening versions of Jason that's ever been put on screen. You also get the fact that it condenses the best parts of, I guess, 1 to 4 into this one movie. You get Baghead or Sackhead Jason, Hockey Jason. It feels like a kind of you also get Mrs. Voorhees as well in the opening credits, and it feels like a bit of a kind of a greatest hits package, if you like. I think it lacks personality that the originals had, and despite it being technically superior, I think it's kind of like it's sort of a glossy imitation of the other films, without that sort of scrappy charm that the others had. The characters are terrible, though. I mean, the characters have never been great in these movies, but they are bloody paper thin and annoying in this film. Even for this franchise, the cast feels like, you know, this kind of checklist of teens that are just waiting to die, basically. It doesn't really add anything new, but then do we want it to add anything new? I think that's the big question at the moment with the way the franchise goes. Do we change it up, or do we just rehash it all? Yeah, I like it a lot, and I actually do like it more than the original Friday the 13th. I will hold my hand up and say that. It took me a while to come round to it, but I wouldn't say that it's number one in the franchise. I don't think many people would agree with that, but I do like it. And it, like I say, when I first saw it, I didn't like it whatsoever. It's taken a while for me to come around to it, but I do think it is incredibly well made. It looks insane. That new 4K version, the movie just looks fantastic. It really does. It looks like a proper Hollywood production. Is that a good thing? I don't know, but we've had plenty of, as I say, scrappy looking Friday the 13th films in the past, and it was nice to see something that looked visually superior to the others. So I'm a fan of it, but not to the extent that I'd say it's the best in the franchise. But what do you guys think? Let's see what you guys are saying about it. Tony Four Eyes says the Friday remake is the best made film, but Jason Lives is the most fun. Sean says it's quite good, but not quite up there. Better than the OG is a hot take that I do agree with, by the way. Yeah, exactly, as I said. Chunky Geordie says Friday the 13th remake is my favorite. Cool. I like my horrors, I like my metal music. Overpolished just does more disservice, says CJJG. My ass fan says, feck off, it's in the top 4, but it's no sackhead. Daz says Friday the 13th remake better than the OG, but at least 3 other movies are better than the remake. Bladesman says not bad, but still think the final chapter is the best sequel. Great Jason in the remake. The first half an hour is that good, the rest doesn't deliver for me. I know what you mean. It kind of peaks quite early, doesn't it? Let me just move this because I'm kind of peering over the chat here like a bit of a Chad or something. Let me see if I can move my image up so I'm not so... Yeah, let's put it there. Where is that? Okay. Wraith says Friday the 13th remake is probably top 3 for me. Part 4 is still better though. And Justin says Friday the 13th 2009 was the first Friday I'd ever seen, and for a period of time I would have absolutely agreed with this statement. Cool. Tony Four Eyes says Friday remake had the best pre-opening scene. And Liana says don't put that evil on us, it's not number 1. Wraith agrees and says, yeah, that opening is amazing. And Alan says 2009 is a well-made film, but lacks the heart and tone of the originals. All style and no substance. I kind of agree with that a little bit, yeah. It's definitely a greatest hits from the first 4 films. I've never wanted characters to die so fast, though. Let me just see if I can pull this chat over here. Yep. Tony Four Eyes says, Chad is really showing your age, Darren. It is. Do you remember on the wall with just peering over? Okay, let's move on to the next hot take. Actually, let me just... The next hot take is... And I don't know whether... Wise Guy one. Oh, sorry. I should just say that was from One Asylum X was the Friday the 13th one. Sorry, I didn't credit you with that. Okay, so moving on to the next one. The Fog remake is better than the original. And then he shut off. He stopped typing and said, sorry, I couldn't bring myself to finish the sentence. Now, Wise Guy 100. I don't know whether you were taking the piss here or whether halfway through you were writing this, you felt embarrassed by it and stopped. So I thought I'd tackle this anyway, okay? And I was unfortunate enough to be working with this film when it came out. So, and I remember the first time watching it and thinking, oh my God, The Fog's one of my favorite films. I'm going down to watch the remake, and it was just not great at all. We all know what it's like. But from a positive point of view, I would say, for a modern audience, I thought the plot was more cohesive. It kind of attempts to flesh out the mythology in ways that the original intentionally left mysterious, which I prefer. So I'm looking at this from a modern audience at the time. It was more kind of, the plot was more fulfilling. People want more information nowadays, whereas I'm more of, I like things being a little bit more ambiguous, and I think the less we know, the more creepy things are. It had bigger scale and production value, I guess. Again, I'm not sure that that's a good thing, because there's something creepy about low-budget movies sometimes. I think it adds to that atmosphere and the aesthetic. I guess the pacing was easier as well for newcomers. The originals, as we know, of The Fog, is a really slow burn. But the remake kind of moves a lot quicker. Again, not a good thing, though, for me. It completely lacks any atmosphere, I think. Like, unlike Carpenter's, which is just dripping in it throughout. Terrible CGI. Terrible CGI throughout this. And I went back and had a little peek on it on YouTube the other day, and it's just aged like fucking milk in the sun. It looks terrible now. It really does. And then again, like Friday the 13th, the performances are just wafer thin throughout. It's even the cast look bored in this film. They really do. They really do. It's just got no soul, no tension, and I don't know reason to exist, really. It is a terrible film. So whether you're joking or not, I don't know, but that's my thoughts on it. Let me see what you guys think here. The Fog remake is garbage, says Kingslayer. No crazy people allowed here, says Tony Four Eyes. I'm pretty sure he's being a wise guy, says Brandon. I'm pretty sure as well, but I just thought I'll tackle it anyway, just in case. Even Tom Welling, who starred in the Fog remake, says it's a terrible film. Yeah, and he's been in some junk. Wheelchair Way to Heaven. The Lighthouse is the best horror film of the 21st century. Cool. Thank you for that. Chester Franklin Jr. says, hell nah, this guy might be on crack or something. Gina says, I can watch the remake, I just switch off as I like some of the actors. Don Mac 3000 says, the Fog remake could have been decent if it didn't get so schlocky in the ghost scenes. I agree. And Blake is just terrible in it. He really is. I actually don't hate the remake because the backstory is better. That's what I was saying. It's more kind of fleshed out, isn't it, I guess? And Brandon says, that says so much more about modern audiences than the film. Yep, completely. Wise Guy says, I was defo joking. The original is my favorite horror of all time. Thank you for the contribution, though, because it did make me laugh when I read it. Alan says, totally taking the euro, and I'd rather pull my toenails out with tweezers than see that Fog remake again. And Daz says, even the House of Wax remake was better than the Fog one. Yeah. Actually, House of Wax remake's not that bad. Christ, he's got to be taking the piss. Worst remake I've ever sat through. The original just gets better as the years go by. Completely agree. And Carpenter's vision is better. Fuck the remake. I don't care who said what about the original Fog, says Chester. Bladesman says, the tone and creepiness of the original is up there with the best. Love it. It's one of the worst remakes I've ever seen, says Wraith. The Fog needs that Carpenter stench. Tom Welling is more wooden than the Pirate's False Leg. And the Thing prequel was pretty good. It's a pity they used too much CGI, but otherwise it's solid. And finally, Sean says, this film has as much reason to exist as Jamie Lee Curtis has a reason to have a part in the cast of the original. Just on that, did anyone see the Rotten Tomatoes score for Ella McKay? Ooh. It's currently at like 23% or something. I had a look this afternoon. She's gone around the world plugging this thing. Yeah, not good. Not good. It's supposed to be pretty awful. Okay, let's move on. Thank you, Wise Guy, for that one. Let's move on to the next one, which is... I had to put this in here. Terminator is a slasher movie. Now, a lot of you agree with this. I think I change my mind about this all the time, and I think I'm settled. I've been settled for a while on the fact that it's a sci-fi movie with slasher elements. That's what I think. Structurally, in parts, it absolutely feels like a slasher movie. And since Cameron's kind of come out now and said we absolutely based it on the slasher boom, you know, Terminator was Michael Myers heavily influenced the Terminator. You know, this unstoppable killer stalking a final girl through the city. You know, all these POV shots, weapon chosen kills, pursuit sequences. They're all kind of part of, I guess, slasher DNA. What else have we got? I guess Carl Reese is the sort of slasher movie boyfriend. I'm really digging here. I'm really kind of trying to find an argument that it is a slasher movie. But on the negative side of things, fundamentally, as I said, I think it's a sci-fi action film. Time travel plot, future war, flashbacks, heavy weaponry, way outside slasher territory, all that stuff. The scale and stakes sort of exceed any sort of slasher formula that you normally get. And slashers, I guess, don't normally decide the fate of humanity. Cameron's tone as well isn't sort of remotely, the tone isn't really slasher-like. It feels like he's kind of, I guess, world building in the Terminator. And I think, I guess calling it a slasher sort of oversimplifies what makes the Terminator quite unique. I wouldn't call it a slasher movie out and out. I'd say it has slasher moments in there. That's it. But on the whole, I think it's a sci-fi / action film. Okay, let's see what people in the chat think. That's my case for it anyway. Let's have a look. Swap the guns for knives and it can be considered a slasher, says Wraith. Yeah, but they're pretty big guns, some of them. Darren, you really are grabbing at straws here. Grabbing at straws? What? To find a case for it to be a slasher? Is that what you're saying? I'm on your side, mate. I want to look at this from both angles. That's what I'm trying to do with these. A bit like Room 666, the formula for that, you know. Although I'm not banishing these films. Unstoppable killer, multiple victims along the way, final girl, etc. Yeah. Wise Guy says, to me, a slasher villain kills at random. The Terminator has targets. True. Final girl, Sarah Connor, says Don Mac. Reese is Loomis, except Loomis never banged Laurie and fathered a child. Would Reese be Loomis, or would it be, what's his name, the doctor guy? I can't remember his name now. He's in 2 or 3 of the Terminator films. Liana says it can't be a slasher. The final girl was deflowered to make her son to send his father back in time to make him. Good point. Yeah, absolutely. It keeps you on the edge of your seat like a horror does. I was truly scared for Sarah and anyone that got in its way. My favorite movie. Yeah, it's a great movie. It's a fair comment in fairness. I still class it as a sci-fi, but elements of slashery in it. Is slashery a word? I like slashery. That's pretty good, Alan. Techno slasher, says Daz. And Tony Foray says the Terminator never slashed anyone. He had guns. I think the argument has always been, and I think if you watch, like Cody Leach put a big case for this forward fairly recently, and said that, if you switch out all the weapons for knives, then you've essentially got a slasher. Myers fan says, Terminator in its limited budget and style, that gives it a slasher film feel, even though it's a sci-fi action. I admit, in moments there are. It feels like a slasher, it does. But I think the action and sci-fi totally outweigh that. If it's not a slasher, it's definitely a horror film. Yeah, it definitely has horror elements. Definitely. Whether it's a slasher or not, it's still scary in my opinion, says Duke. And My Chunky Geordie says, to me, it's a sci-fi as it is machines, and it's Armageddon-type film more than a slasher or horror. And Liana says, I absolutely love Terminator, though. We all do. I think everybody does. I love it more. It's the best in the franchise for me. I can't believe he's thinking about doing another one. I mean, if he's going to do it, that's great. Drop Avatar and do a slasher film. Because there's kind of question marks over whether they're going to do another one or not. I read something the other day that says it kind of wraps it up nicely, but leaves room for another if they want to. So, will Avatar continue? I don't know. Slasher, definitely horror. It has that cat and mouse feel, skeletal robot come the end of it. Yeah. If Chopping Mall is horror, then Terminator certainly is. Chopping Mall, there's a film. Logan is live said, now that would have been something. Loomis being Jamie's father. And Tony Four Eyes says, if you switch out all the munchkins in Oz for knives, it's a slasher. Thank you, Tony. Okay, let's move over to the next hot take on here. And it is from Thrasher M6S says, I thought Rosemary's Killer has the best Tom Savini effects and should be more celebrated. I like this one. I do. Now, Rosemary's Killer is the British title for the Prowler, for those of you that weren't aware. The Prowler, for whatever reason, was renamed in the UK, and we got the title Rosemary's Killer, which kind of still works, but I do prefer the Prowler. Savini's work in this, he himself praises his own work in this film. I don't think it's his best. I think he peaked at, I've got to say, Day of the Dead is his best work. It's insanely good, his Day of the Dead. Some of that stuff in there just looks so real. You know, you've got the moment where the arm gets lopped off, and they drag that machete along the concrete, separating the arm, and then cauterize it. That just looks so real. The biting of the fingers towards the end, the head's being pulled apart, you know, roads getting ripped in two. It just looks insane. However, there are some great stuff. There's some really convincing gore in this. No cutaways, no cheats. You know, he was into that sort of carving out grooves in machetes so that it looked like he was slicing away. My favorite kill in this has to be the bayonet through the top of the head and the way that the eyes go white and everything. That's a brutal kill, and it looks incredible. Some real practical wizardry in this. And it's got a really gritty tone as this film as well. I think amongst a lot of slasher fans, it's also, you know, it's a favorite as well. And it's kind of this cult gem that has deserved all the sort of reevaluation it's had over the years. I think I wish they would do a 4K version of it. I don't believe there is one around. It would have been a perfect sort of Screen Gems 4K version. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't seem to remember seeing a 4K version of The Prowler anywhere. However, the film around all the great practical effects is pretty thin, pretty bland. It's quite slow in parts and quite repetitive. It never reached the sort of pop cultural success of a lot of other slashers that came out around that time. And it really is only remembered for the effects work. I think whenever anybody talks about The Prowler, they really only talk about those great effects moments in the film. The swimming pool kill, the bayonet through the head, the death of the Prowler, spoiler alert. That's a great moment, that headshot. Fantastic stuff. So yeah, I mean, it is one of my favorite Tom Savini high points, I guess, but I think his best work is Day of the Dead for sure. Okay, let's see what's Dad says Avatar isn't working out. I guess if he's retreating back to Terminator. Yeah, he's been quite vocal about that fairly recently, but not saying whether he's going to direct. Every time I think of Avatar, I think of Papyrus, that sad font choice in the original. Papyrus. Is that font? Okay. Alan says, if you're looking for people that lost their way career-wise, Cameron is top of the list. Tony Foray says, I still never seen The Prowler. Oh, you should give it a watch. Definitely. Brandon says, creatively speaking, I agree. However, you can't argue with those box office. Yeah. And Dave's a big fan as well. He's done a great video on arguments as to why Avatar's such a great franchise. Savini is an effects master, but not a very nice man to meet in person. Yeah, I hear that from a few people. Still not watched this yet. Does it have a Blu-ray release anywhere? Yeah, I think it does have a Blu-ray, but not a 4K. The effects in The Prowler are awesome, says Andrew. The movie just drags a little for a modern day audience. Yeah, it certainly does. And Jukebox Willie says The Prowler is so underrated and barely mentioned, but it has some of the best slasher kills ever. I agree. There's some great work. I love The Burning, and I think some of the kills in that are insanely good. I think he outdoes himself with The Prowler. I was going to call it Rosemary's Killer, but The Prowler. Okay. Cameron was saying it needs to pull $2 billion to be able to move forward with Blue Smurf 4. Wow. Not a fan of 4K releases of early horrors. Takes away from the nasty feel, says Tony. And Brandon says Day of the Dead is definitely peak Savini. Daz says, you just need to be a young woman. Savini will be very nice to you then. Yeah, yeah. He does like a fluttering eyelash. Okay, let's move over to the next hot take. And this one comes from Myers fan. I presume this is you, Andrew. Wes Craven's Scream is a genre classic. Everything thereafter is absolute Scooby-Doo crap. I take it you mean everything thereafter in the franchise is absolute Scooby-Doo crap. I took it that that's what you meant. Okay. So how do I feel about this? Like you probably know I'm not a huge Scream fan, but I really do like the original. I think it was kind of almost lightning in a bottle. Really smart, meta, funny, scary, a genuine sort of genre reset. The sequels sort of lean harder into the comedy and all that kind of soap opera mystery nonsense. And you can see how someone would feel that the tone drifts almost into sort of cartoonish territory as the franchise goes along, and particularly in the last film. You know, it's almost like some of the teenagers had superpowers the way they walked away from some of those kills. I also think Ghostface becomes less threatening the more the franchise goes on. More pratfalls, more slapstick. He loses the scare factor as the franchise progresses. On the other hand, Scream 2, I know is like beloved by the fans, and not for me, but for a lot of the fans, arguably as strong as the first film. Scream 4, I thought was really good, and again another sort of fan favorite, and I guess ahead of its time in its commentary. And then Ghostface's clumsiness, you could argue, is part of its part of the identity rather than a flaw, but it just doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. And then you know on the plus side again, you could say that the franchise has like remarkable longevity without collapsing at all. Like, it's so consistent. Every entry that they've had has been a huge success and hasn't really, they've not had, apart from 3, and again, I'm speaking to this as a kind of outsider, because I'm not really, I don't really care for the franchise that much. But as an outsider, you can look at it and go, well, all these movies are fairly consistent. It doesn't have a Halloween 5. It doesn't have, you know, a Nightmare on Elm Street 5 or a Jason Takes Manhattan. They're all kind of consistent throughout, unlike most slasher franchises. So I think there's an argument for the fan base that it's a very strong franchise. But I agree with you, Andrew, that the original for me is the best, and I don't think they've beaten it at all. It was so unique, and given that it was also a real tribute to Halloween, I kind of really embraced it when the first Scream came out. It was at a time when slashers had vanished. You know, I think the nearest thing to a slasher we had in the mid-90s was Mute Witness, and that's stretching it. But this came along, and it was a breath of fresh air. I just didn't care for what came after that much. So I'm kind of with you, Andrew, on this. I feel that they've never beaten the original. And for me personally, although I know there are a lot of fans of the franchise out there who love this franchise, and it's great. It's so great that slashers are still taking money at the box office in the UK. When this film comes out in, when is it, March? This new one, it's going to be huge. Of course it is. Everybody, even I want to know what all these dead cast members are coming back for. So that's a good thing. It's a good thing for cinema. It's a good thing for horror, and a good thing for the slasher subgenre as well. But I agree with you. The first is the best. Okay, what do you guys think? Tony Forai says, absolutely agree. First, it's original, but after that, it's repetitive crack. Frank roasted it well. Yeah, Frank's video was great on it. It really was. The original Scream is awesome. The sequels are okay. And as a franchise, it's been mostly solid. Yeah, I agree. Don Mack says, I would keep Scream 2 just for the sequel tropes, but agree about the rest being crap. And CJG says, I think the Scream franchise is fun. Out of the sequels, I think 4 was my favorite. I liked 4. Lee did a video about it this last week over on Drum Dums, and you know, a lot of people talk about that kind of lens flare or that smear that it has, and it is pretty annoying. I'd love to see a version of it without that. Dad says, I can't really comment as I don't care about the franchise, but love 3 for its Hollywood setting. Oh, I didn't like 3 at all. It's just friends. Angry friends. I don't mind the Scream films. They're predictable, but they're completely made but they're competently made entertainment. I don't get the hatred towards the series. It's not like it's Saw. Yeah, I'm not a hater like Frank is. And it's not my favorite franchise by a long shot, but I'm not a hater. All sequels are rubbish, and Ghostface is weak character and definitely not a horror icon the fan base perceives. Juicebox Willie says, Scream franchise just feels too self-aware at this point. First film is the only one that needed to be made. Alan says, I respect the fact that the first Scream helped to reinvigorate the horror genre, but the whole franchise became a parody of itself, in my opinion. The jokey elements wore thin. Yeah, and that was the issue that Frank and I used to talk about, was the fact that the same company made Scary Movie in the middle of making the Scream franchise. You know, after Scream 3, I think it was. And so it's very difficult to take the franchise seriously after you've had a few Scary Movie movies that have totally ripped the arse out of it. So that's what I found difficult about watching anything from sort of 4 onwards. Sean says it is, yes, definite milestone movie in horror. It feels influenced horrors for several years after. How people feel about that is a different matter altogether, but yes, I'd say so. Hot take, Ghostface is just a mask worn by many, not a classic villain. Yeah, so many of them, isn't there? Hot take, Scary Movie made Ghostface not scary at all, says Deshaun. There you go, exactly what I just said. Daz says, Scream didn't really save horror, it just appealed to cynical 90s teens who didn't watch the better New Nightmare. Ooh. I don't know. I think it breathed new life into the slasher subgenre for sure, because you had that kind of resurgence after that. Scream spawned too many crap teen slashers, cash-ins. Yep, it did. There was a lot of crap that came after this, and 6 had everything. 1 gets stabbed so many times, but could probably hit the vape right after. Ray says, I remember seeing the first one in the cinema. As soon as the first few deaths kicked in, you knew it was going to be good. Yeah. Lillard comes back as Shaggy in true Scooby-Doo fashion, pulls the mask off, and there he is. Hot take, horror movies were better before Scream was released, and its influence then ruined horror. Ooh, that is a hot take. My kids in their 20s love the Scream franchise and both went to the cinema to see the recent entries. It's obviously for the younger generation these days. Mighty Zora says, totally skipped my comment again. What did you say? 1 second. Well, I can't get everybody's, and I'm looking for ones that are relevant to what I'm talking about. So I was talking about Scream, and then there's a comment about JLC's wig in Halloween 2, so it wasn't kind of relevant to my flow, but I'll read it out now for you. Darren, JLC's wig in H2 isn't as bad as everyone says. I disagree. It's terrible. And how that thing never went up in flames at the end there, I have no idea. It doesn't look anything like her hair in the original film. And if you watch it in 4K, you can see the bloody join to her head. Hey, how you doing, buddy? Good evening, Darren. And comments? No Scream sequel was surpassed the original, period. But I have to say the fact that Ghostface is always a different person makes this franchise unique. Look, if I skip your comments at all, folks, it's never personal at all. It's just for flow. I'm not singling people out. Well, I might do sometimes that I don't want to answer, but I'm looking for comments that are part of the flow. Anyway, Okay, so let me just have a... Oh, super chat just come in. Alan says, I know the coffee where you live isn't as good as here, but have one on me, Darren. Yeah, that was the whole thing. We arranged to meet up for a coffee, and it ended up being a couple of Guinnesses. But thank you so much, Alan. That's really kind of you. I appreciate that. Yeah, the coffee's not as good. In fact, I had two kind of earlier today. I left work and went for a couple of drinks with some colleagues, and I had two stouts because they didn't sell Guinness, and it was nothing. It was in a brew dog, and they, yeah, bit of a nasty taste afterwards. Brandon says it would be great to see Tarantino in the next Scream film get killed by Ghostface. During the kill, it's revealed to be Stu. Yeah, that whole thing's just weird. I don't know what's going on there. Why is he just like shitting on loads of popular actors at the moment? Hey, Marisol. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And it is from Chuck. It says, Kane Hodder is overrated as Jason. I think the fact he played the character multiple times has kind of fooled people into thinking he must be the best because of that fact. Yeah, I don't mind Kane Hodder. I don't mind him at all. I don't think he's a bad Jason. I think he brought a lot of really cool elements to Jason. It's a little one note. It's kind of a bit angry and stompy and heavy breathing. He's a bit of a brute. And I think some people, I guess, prefer more sort of subtler, earlier interpretations of Jason. It's a shame that his sort of tenure with the franchise came at when they were basically churning out the worst movies, the goofiest movies in the franchise, which is kind of it leaves him at a real disadvantage because he is a really good Jason, but in all the wrong movies, I feel. I didn't say the best, a really good Jason. And also the fact that he's played him so many times does inflate his reputation a little bit. Derek Mears, Ted White, Richard Brooker, who else have we had? Arguably, I guess they brought more variation to the role and more nuance. But Kane sort of defines the modern Jason persona, I guess. The posture, the breathing, that sort of physical menace. And I guess one thing you can't argue with Kane Hodder is that he's really passionate about the fact that he was Jason in those 4 films. I think out of all the actors that have played him, Kane believes he's Jason more than any of them. And then I guess he has some of the better kills as well within the movies that he's in. I mean, certainly, in whatever you say about Jason X, that liquid nitrogen scene is just fantastic. That's one of the best kills in the franchise. And then I guess nowadays, I think because he has been in so many of the films, he's sort of synonymous with Friday the 13th, with the brand. Not by accident, but I think because I think that he has a real genuine connection to the fans, a lot more than any of the other Jasons that are still alive. So I guess you could argue Derek Mears. Derek Mears is incredibly popular, but he's not my favorite Jason. I would probably lean towards Richard Brooker or Ted White, but I do get why people do like him, why people do like Kane Hodder. So I guess I agree with your argument a little bit there. I guess he is overrated as Jason. Let's see what you guys think. Yeah, let's have a look here. Kane was a great Jason in shit movies, says Brandon. Yeah, exactly. Ted White was the GOAT, says Jukebox Willie. Batshit says, in the worst films, isn't he? In the worst films, isn't he? So it's hard to say. He's not my favorite, though. Yeah, but he's not a bad Jason, you know. My favorite film, Jason's are Richard Brooker, Derek Mears, and was it C.J. Graham in Jason Lives? Yeah, C.J. Graham. Yeah. Hodder just plays Jason as a big lump. Yeah, I know what you mean. He's just kind of stomping around all the time, isn't he? This kind of big brute that's angry all the time. Wraith says the difficulty is that most of the Kane Hodder Friday the 13th aren't that good. Part 3 and Part 4 Jason were way better. But it's kind of, it does help if you've got a good Jason. And in those films, I guess Kane Hodder does elevate those movies ever so slightly. If you had a terrible Jason in Part 7, 8, 9, and 10, then those films would be even worse. But I think he does a good job in slightly lifting those movies. Don Mack says, I think all of the Jason actors are good. Kane Hodder is at best only slightly better than the rest. And Daz1428 says, Kane is fine. He earned his title as the Jason because he did the conventions and magazines and other promotions. His performance, though, are just above Kurt Singer to me. Kurt Singer. Jeez. Muckman says, I've only seen the first 2 Friday the 13th films. Yeah, I'd probably do 3 and 4 and leave it at that, I think. Batshit Scary says, Hodder plays Jason as a small lump in platforms. Brandon says, Kane is also a very personable guy. People like him. They do. He's always very popular at conventions. And he's small. He is. I can actually say I've stood near him, walked past him, and he's, yeah, he wasn't anywhere near me at all. I'm 6'1", and he was, I'd say, around there or something on me. Yeah, and with the lifts as well. Acres of movies. Would you rather go on a dark ride for Dr. Giggles or Candyman? Dr. Giggles I've only seen once. Candyman I like. Yeah, I'll go with Candyman. K-Rock says, if Kane was in Freddy vs. Jason, even if it was exactly the same film, it would be way higher on my ranking. But Ken Kersinger was lame sauce, so it's on the bottom. Yeah, Freddy vs. Jason. I mean, I barely even talk about that film anymore. And Domac says there are no bad Jason performances. Well, if you had to say there was one, it would be Freddy vs. Jason, I think. Hodder was a good Jason, says Chester. Jukebox Willie says Kane is definitely the Jason of the franchise due to the number of films and his actual passion for the character, and he was done dirty for Freddy vs. Jason. Yeah, funny he never mentions that, does he? Jason Takes Manhattan, still a masterpiece. In fact, he mentions that about as much as Savini mentions that he's been in Vietnam. Myers fan says Kane Hodder wanted to be like Robert Englund and have a full association as the character. However, Englund is actually a good actor, which makes the difference. Yes, yeah, I would agree on that one. It does help if you have an actor in these roles, particularly with Freddy, with the personality. Who's shorter, Kane or Dave? Dear, depends which photo of Dave you're looking at. Jason Takes a Cruise. He did. Jukebox Willie says, imagine Brooker's build with Ted White's brutality combined. Brooker and White. I think Brooker was brutal. Yeah, he was. Brooker was a lump. He was huge. Like that. I mean, I go on about it all the time, but that moment when he puts the mask on, when he appears on the jetty, just fantastic. Just with that spear gun, throws it to the side and just like so coolly walks off, picking out his next victim. It's terrific. Andrew says, to be fair, down 85% of the population has to look up to talk to you while standing. I'm not that tall. What do you think? I'm on stilts? I like Kane, just not my favourite, says my chunky Geordie. Wasn't Ken in Jason Takes Manhattan towers over him, I think? Yes, Ken Kersinger was in the, was it like a cafe or something like that? He was a chef in the cafe or something. And there's a moment where they square up to each other and he's way above him. Hodder's role, brief role as the guard in Jason Goes to Hell was shocking. Yeah, that mullet. That mullet. And Kane is the Dave Mustaine of slashers. Just won't let it lie. Won't let it go. Dom Mac says, hot take, Friday the 13th, part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan is better than every movie in the franchise since then. No, not the remake. You're kidding. What? Are you on about in that particular timeline? Certainly not the remake. That VHS is long gone. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Thank you for that, Chuck, by the way. Okay, here we go. Corey Cunningham is a better written and more interesting character than Jamie Lloyd. And on that note, Rowan Campbell is a better actor than Danielle Harris. Ooh. I don't know if any of you guys have seen Dead Pit Radio this last few weeks. They did a video. It's a YouTube channel, Dead Pit Radio. 2 Southern guys in the US. They did a video about the fact that Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor Compton are not speaking anymore. And the fact that they've been separated at conventions and all this kind of stuff. I don't know how true that is. I've no idea. They put this video out there. It got a lot of views. Danielle Harris saw it and then was like messaging them going nuts and saying, you can't say this. You don't know shit, blah, blah, blah. But to be fair, their podcast has stopped. Talk Scary to Me has stopped. It's finished. It's ended. So they then read out her messages on their show. And off the back of that, they got a shit ton of backlash from Danielle Harris fans. And then basically read out the mean tweets from the Danielle Harris fans that were aimed at them. So it's been kind of an ongoing thing, quite funny as well over the last couple of weeks. So Dead Pit Radio, check out those guys and just check out I think they've done like 3 or 4 episodes on the Danielle Harris situation at the moment. I don't know what the situation is. I'm not saying what they're saying is true or false or what. I have no idea. But something, it appears that podcast is no longer. And something doesn't feel right there. Making Darren sound like Paul Bunyan? Who's Paul Bunyan? Dear. Anyway, so what do we feel about this? Okay. Dear. I, as I said at the start of this film, I like Rowan Campbell as an actor. I thought it was, when Halloween 45 came along, it felt incredibly brave to bring him along to that convention, given the backlash, the terrible backlash that he had about Halloween Ends. And people were queuing. Those of you that were there would know that people were queuing for miles to see Rowan Campbell. He was busy all weekend. His queue was rivaling, James Jude and Nick Castle and all that kind of stuff. Loads of people wanted to see him. In the film, I think he has a kind of multi-stage arc in the film. Trauma, exile, obsession. I think he's got an incredible journey in Halloween Ends. I think he's a really good actor. I think he introduced some real, I guess, new and different energy into the movie. And Jamie's material across Halloween 4 and 6 is kind of all over the place due to the kind of mess that is the Thorn trilogy, I guess. And then in 6, it's obviously not her. It's not Danielle. I think the Corey Cunningham character and story is a lot deeper than what Jamie Lloyd's is. Unfortunately, Corey Cunningham hijacks a finale to a 45-year-old saga, and it felt like the wrong character in the wrong film at the wrong time. That's not his fault, because he did a really good job. Had that character had more like an arc across the 3 films, it would have been terrific. But to just kind of shoehorn him in that last episode works as a standalone film, but as closure to a 45-year-old franchise, it doesn't for me. I don't hate the film. I actually don't mind it. But I just try and watch that in isolation, that movie. And it kind of works better that way for me. Jamie Lloyd, I guess, was a sort of 80s, 90s, slasher icon. And she anchored those 2 movies. She did, I remember going to the cinema and seeing Halloween 4 and thinking, this girl's really good. And she does her best with whatever material she has in Halloween 5. There's a lot of love for her out there. She's got a great fan base. And I think that her performance, particularly in Halloween 4, vastly outshines the material that she's given, because it's not a great script, is it? But I think Jamie Lloyd has, I guess, staying power within the Halloween franchise that Corey Cunningham will never be able to match. So I think across that one film, I think in isolation, I think he does a better job. But across the franchise, I think there's more love and more nostalgia and more positivity for Jamie's character, or Daniel Harris's character, Jamie Lloyd, than Corey Cunningham will ever have. That's how I feel. Let me see what you guys feel about it. A lot of comments here. Daniel Harris giving them free advertising, should have just kept quiet. Just kept the content coming. We'll have to check it out. She seems to love beef with people. Yeah. Those Dead Pit guys. Yeah, very salty, as Liana says. Not quite a fair comparison considering how young she was in H4 and H5. He was 24 in Ends. They both are great. I've always said Halloween Ends gets better with every watch. I agree. Hot take: if Corey Cunningham sat up at the very end of the film end credits, Halloween Ends would have been the best of the David Gordon Green trilogy and could have led to future Corey films. I guess so. I was always expecting something. I didn't expect it to be quite as finite for his character. Although he does disappear at the end. He does, doesn't he? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. If Halloween Kills and Ends were written better, Corey's character would have been introduced earlier and wouldn't have been as much as an issue as it was in Ends, says Wraith. I agree. Should have been there right from the start. Right from the start of that trilogy. And Rowan Campbell always reminds me of Scorpio in Dirty Harry. He does have that look. Brandon Collins says, horror fans can be petty sometimes. Daniel Harris has her issues, but she's a working actor for 40 years and in some pretty great projects. Campbell is very close to being typecast. Yeah, he's got to try and step outside the horror kind of genre, hasn't he? He's got to try and do something different. The last 3 or 4 movies I've seen him in have all been horror films. I hate Corey Cunningham, but hopefully when I see Silent Night Remake tonight, he will redeem himself. What, Corey will? Or Rohan? Chunky Geordie says he played this part well and Daniel played all her parts well. Rowan Campbell is decent. In The Monkey, his wig had my attention more, though. In Ends, he was the best thing about the film. So, yeah, why not? The writing isn't the best for 5 and 6. Corey wins. Yeah, The Monkey, I wasn't a fan of The Monkey. I thought the first half was great. Second half just lost me. Deshaun says he's a decent actor, but his character is terrible, and I always hate that Romeo and Juliet plot. Tony Forrest says, no point to the Corey character if you're going to kill him off. Exactly. Jamie isn't really the stuff. I'm trying to remember now. Did he vanish at the end, or was he just dead? I'm trying to remember. It's a good year since I've watched it. Jamie isn't really the star of 4. Rachel is the interesting one. 5 doesn't add much. 6, she dies. Corey has more depth than Laurie in her own movie, says Daz. I wish Halloween Ends just had been a remake of Christine. That's basically what it is at the end of the day. Yeah, it feels that way, doesn't it? And Daz says, yeah, if Campbell cares about longevity, he should do something different soon. Myers fan says, I find it a bit weird that grown men salivate over Jamie Lloyd in a weird way. No one's salivating over Jamie Lloyd, are they? Batshit says, anyway, he came out to wrestle Michael Miles. Never mind, Jamie Lloyd. How about Busta Rhymes versus Corey? They both beat the shit out of Myers. Who wins? Hot take, David Gordon Green Halloween trilogy was doomed when they didn't continue from Halloween 2 and took away any motive for Michael to go after Laurie again. Logan says he's terrible in The Monkey. And Leanna says, I've only seen Ends once. I'm sitting this one out. And then Forgotten Horror. Hey, Davey, how you doing, buddy? Says The Monkey was funny, but I agree it dragged on towards the end. Yeah. Too much mullet. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And thank you to M. Williams 988 for that one. It's a good question. Okay. Daryl Gilchrist 9618 says, Hereditary is boring cack. I actually quite like Hereditary. Honestly, I do. Ah, dear. What can I say about this? It is a slow burn. It's kind of grief-driven horror. If it's not your thing, then I guess the film drags a little bit. It favors, I guess, atmosphere over pacing and momentum. And then that sort of third act tonal shift, if you're not invested in it, it can feel a bit ridiculous, I guess. I think critically it's one of the most acclaimed horror films in years. You know, it was a real critic's darling when it came out. And Toni Collette, as we've spoken about before, Toni Collette is fantastic. She can just throw her hand to anything. She's a fine actress. Absolutely, you know, whether it's an action movie, comedy, horror, musical, drama, she can just do it. She's one of the most versatile actresses around. The dread in this film as well. I think that's one of the reasons why it really resonates with me every time I think about the film or every time I watch it. It's just, there's so much dread in this. It's so rich on that front. And then I just think sometimes people just call it boring. I think that maybe people expected something different from it. But I find it it's kind of like when I first saw The Exorcist, I was kind of like, I was really young and I thought, okay. Yeah. Every time I watch that film, it gets better and better and better. And I feel the same about Hereditary. I enjoy it even more each time I watch it. I really do. I think they took some huge swings in there, and for me, it really paid off. I like it a lot. I do. But what do you think? What do you guys think? Let's have a look here. Hereditary is absolutely not boring cack. It's one of my favorite horrors in recent years, says Muckman. Wise Guy 100 says, oof, Hereditary is phenomenal with an unreal Toni Collette performance. And Tony Foray says, most horrors are all hype nowadays and rarely deliver. Daz says, Hereditary was fine, never understood the acclaim. The scene after the accident is the best part. Hereditary is beautifully filmed, says Don Mac, but tough to watch. It is tough to watch. I mean, the death of the girl is just horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Just a really sad chain of events that happens. Jukebox Willie says Hereditary is a perfect midnight movie with lights. Thought it was awesome, just didn't stick the ending. Oh, I don't know. That shot of Toni Collette hanging there, just garroting. Oh, it's fantastic. Hereditary gets better every time I watch it. I watch it as well, says Monkman. It's so unsettling and foreboding. And Myers fan says, I really like Hereditary. It's really well shot and put together. Looks and sounds amazing. I agree with you. Big fan of Hereditary here, says Bill. Hey, Bill, how you doing, buddy? Muckman comes back with, I love all the little clues throughout Hereditary. He loves doing that. He did it with Midsommar as well. You know, the first shot of the film pans along the wall and basically lays out the whole film for you in that moment. Alan says, I don't mind slow burn at all. We seem to live in a time when people don't have a long attention span anymore. Slow burn used to be called character development. And Batshit says, I disliked Hereditary. Then I watched it again. The grief Colette portrays is great. The pace ramps up eventually. And now I realize I was wrong after my first watch. Yeah, it is. Like, if anybody's there and they've only seen it once, you should really give it another go, because it really is. I think it's a really special horror film. I wouldn't call it boring cack, Daryl Gilchrist, but thank you for submitting that hot take. I can't agree with it, unfortunately, and it looks like most of the people here in the chat can't agree with it either. So sorry about that, but thank you for submitting it. Okay, where are we next? A movie that I do. The more people that watch it, I do feel it is becoming more and more divisive. I thought Weapons was dreadful. Everyone seemed to be bombing it up as this amazing movie, one of the best of 2025 and all that. Over 2 hours of utter shit, which I couldn't wait to end. And that's HUDTube 7920. I liked Weapons a lot. I was lucky enough to go along to the UK, I think it was the UK premiere of it that I went along to. Was it the premiere or was it media screening? I can't remember now, but it was one or the other. Oh, sorry, no, Sinners I went to the premiere. Weapons I went to the media screening. I think it's structured in such a way that the marketing for this film would have you believe it was something a lot more complex than what it actually was. And I think people were going in thinking it was going to be like a really, I don't know, maybe almost kind of, I hate using the term elevated, you know, something along the lines of Hereditary or Midsommar or something like that. And it absolutely isn't. And if you don't connect with the structure of this film, I think it can feel quite punishing, I guess. If you're in there with that frame of mind, then I think a lot of these characters can seem quite detached and unreadable. And the marketing, like I said, promised a different kind of movie, setting a lot of people's expectations up to fail, I think. And because of that, I think the tonal shifts in the film, because there is a lot of humor in there, can feel slightly disjointed to people. Having said that, I wasn't one of those people. I absolutely loved it. I loved the fact that it wasn't as this hugely complex movie, that it was a fairly simple premise that was executed so well. Loads of people like kind of praised its ambition and how bold it was, and the performances for me were terrific. I thought everybody played a great role in this. It does take big swings, but that's what audiences want, I think, a lot of the time. And I thought that the ending, you know, I thought the payoff at the end, I thought was really rewarding. I did. I thought that it was funny. People were in. They actually kind of billed it as a comedy at the screening that I was at. The guy that introduced it, a guy called Alex Zane, said it's one of the best horror comedies I've seen in a long time. And so everybody was like, "What? We're going to see a comedy here?" And people were really laughing at it. But then when I looked at some reactions to screenings in the US, people were getting angry about the fact that people were laughing about it. I don't know, maybe the audience that I watched it with just went with it. And I had a great time watching it in that first screening. And I've since bought it on 4K, and I've watched it 3 times now. And I mean, yeah, some of the moments don't work quite as well when you watch it for a third time, particularly the scene when she walks across the street, gets in the car, snips the hair, all that sort of thing, which is terrifying when you see it in the cinema. But third time watching it doesn't have the same impact, you know. But I have a great time each time I watch this film, and I'm looking forward to watching it again. I was a fan, but I get that there are a lot of people out there that don't agree with that. So I can't agree with your hot take, HoodTube, but maybe some people in the chat will do. Not seeing Weapons and not really bothered about seeing it, says Gina. Gina, I think you might like it. Tony Four Eyes says, I absolutely agree. Weapons is the worst film of the year. Utter crap. Wow. Muckman says, I somewhat agree about Weapons. I thought it was certainly overrated, but I did enjoy it. Brandon says, I've watched Weapons 3 times now, and it gets better every time I see it. I love this film. Tony Four Eyes says, Weapons is worse than Barbarian, and that's saying something. Jukebox Willie says, Weapons was way better than Sinners. I don't know about way better than Sinners. I kind of like them both the same. I think Sinners and Weapons were great movies this year for horror. And both were hugely successful, and that's a good thing. It's a great thing for cinema and a great thing for horror. Wraith says Weapons was okay. It's the more you think about the story, the more it falls apart. I don't know. I know. I guess, you know, you have to go with it, but come on, there's been some other films this year, whereas I think when you see it, Silent Night, Deadly Night has some plot holes in there that you could drive not just your truck through, but every truck in the neighborhood through. It's yeah, I won't go on about it, but yeah. Daz says, still haven't seen Weapons, but I've seen the image of the woman ripped off from Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, so I have to get to seeing it. Okay, I've never seen that, so I'm not quite sure what this is, but I think I might know what you mean. Tony Vorai says Sinners was just a Dusk Till Dawn ripoff. It was a little bit more than that. It was I know there were some influences there with that film, but it was a really well-crafted movie. Beautiful to look at, sounded amazing, great performances, you know, and at a time when, you know, you think you've seen everything in the vampire genre, they bring something out like this. Don Mac 3K says, I think Weapons is really good. It's Sinners that I think is overrated. I prefer From Dusk Till Dawn over that. And Tommy G76 says, I think Weapons was a good movie with a different little twist. One of the better movies of 2025. Cool. Batshit says, sorry, I can't agree with this. Weapons was great. Some dodgy little things in there that didn't need to be, but they pieced it together well from different character plots, and it paid off for me greatly. Logan is Live says it was a different experience because of the different perspectives. It had good moments like when the mom came out of the house with the scissors. I walked out thinking it wasn't a waste of money. Is that how you judge things? Well, it wasn't a waste of money. Daz says From Dusk Till Dawn was a vampire ripoff. True, Daz. Says Tony. Myers fan says Weapons is amazing. Again, another slow burn. Just rewatched it on 4K, and it's definitely one of my favorite films of the last decade. It's great that these little movies are doing so well. A little drink there. Amy Madigan might actually win the Oscar this year. I hope she does. Look, I think she's got a Globe nomination, I think I saw. Maybe she will. I don't see there's any reason why something like Weapons or Sinners can't be nominated for Best Picture. And Ray says the police are just dumb as shit in that movie. Wasn't the witch kind of having some influence on them, though? Weapons is fine, a good film, but not in the same league as Sinners, for example. But perfectly entertaining. A lot worse films this year. Utter shit is a bit unfair. Batshit Scary says, I was audibly laughing in the cinema. I'm British. Dear Americans, we don't do that. Actually, I think Weapons is awesome, says Duke. Gonna watch it tomorrow for the 4th time. Good for you, mate. And Myers fan says, hot take, mobile should be banned from cinemas. That's not a hot take. That's a fact. That should happen. I love Barbarian until the implausible water tower ending. I like Barbarian. It's a little disjointed as Barbarian, but I think as a first movie, you've got to give him plaudits for that. I think Zach Cregger did a good job. Brandon says there are plot holes in every film. And Liana says, I loved Sinners. You really love the characters. You do really love the characters. And stay around until the very, very last moment of the end credits. It just keeps going. Justin says, saw Sinners in the theaters twice with a friend who saw it 5 times. Haters be damned. Jack O'Connell is outstanding in Sinners. Wait until you see him in that film behind me there. Brandon Collins says, Sinners was my favourite film of the year before I saw One Battle After Another. It is a truly remarkable piece of filmmaking. And Cheney says, Weapons is funny the whole time. It is. Scream 3 is better than 4. Hot take. No. No, not at all. And Don Mac 3000 says, The Substance was nominated for the Best Picture Oscar last year, so I could see Weapons and Sinners get nominations for the next. Me too. And sometimes, you know, they should. I know they've tried to figure out ways of doing this, but sometimes there are certain movies that save cinema, that save certain genres, and they just get no recognition whatsoever. And so it's been nice to see movies like The Substance be nominated when ordinarily horrors just don't get a look in. The hair on the baby bottle from Barbarian gave me nightmares. Yeah. And Magnificent Logo 6113 says, I have to hot take, Weapons is very overhyped and rushed. Rushed? Really? Okay, right. Before this next one, because this is a huge hot take. In fact, I almost didn't put this one on because I didn't want a riot to break out. I just want to say thank you again to everybody for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, please do so and hit the like button because I've got lots of content coming up and I'm really excited about sharing it with you. Lots more lives coming. I'm going back to a live a week. I'll probably do a little bit more over Christmas if I have the time. A lot of pre-recorded stuff coming as well. Some kind of those little mini documentary type videos that I've been doing. A lot of those coming along. So please consider subscribing and liking the video. Or hype it. If you can hype it, that'd be great. So this final one, I think it's Jordan Moran, who's a long-time follower of TSL and my channel. And he says this. Discuss in the chat, folks, and I'll give you my thoughts on this. Wes Craven is not a great director, says Jordan. He's just poking the bear here, I think. Okay. I'll admit his filmography is inconsistent. For every masterpiece within Wes Craven's resume, there's a Vampire in Brooklyn or a Cursed or whatever else he's done. And I think that conceptually with a lot of his films, I think he excelled. Now, how do I say this? He excelled more conceptually than he does visually, I think, a lot of the time. God, what else can I say? I don't think his direction was ever really as refined as Carpenter's or Cronenberg's or who else can I say? I'll just use those two as an example. But he did, in his favor, he did create 3 genre-defining films across 3 different decades. As much as I hate Last House on the Left, it is a movie that's still talked about today because of how notorious it was. Elm Street in the 80s, and then Scream in the 90s. And so because of those three films, I think he's reshaped horror 3 times now. And his ability to tap into cultures and reinvent horror, I think, is kind of untouched. To do it 3 times like that. Because whatever you say, and whatever you say about Last House on the Left, there was nothing else really like it out there at the time. And to be still kind of, it has its fans. It does have its fans. It's still talked about today. It's still, you know, it's a horrible, grubby little subgenre, but he kind of kicked it off. And it's so, no matter how you look at the films that he's done, I think, consistency aside, I think the highs in his career are some of the highest points the genre has ever seen. And for that, I can't agree that Wes Craven is not a great director. I think he's inconsistent, but I think when he's having a good day, it's a fucking good day. So I'm going to leave it at that. Let's see what you guys think. Let's have a look. He's not great, but not bad, says Tony Four Eyes. Nightmare on Elm Street is a real horror film, unlike Sinners, says Juicebox Willie, sorry. I agree with Jordan. Craven has only made 2 great films. The rest is trash. Really? Just 2? Wes Craven is a good director, but I wouldn't consider him to be one of the greats. No, I agree with that. But the ones that have really worked for the genre have been something really special. Justin says, what horror director has the best track record? Oh, God. I would say Carpenter up until 84. Probably. Romero, Carpenter, Argento are way better directors, says Duke. Yeah, I would agree with that. Nightmare is my favorite film of all time, but I could see people not rating Craven as a director highly. Rob McGregor says The Serpent and the Rainbow was a well-made movie. It is. It's a long time since I've seen that film. And Chester Franklin said, I disagree with this hot take. Ray says, Craven brought us some great films and not so great films, but isn't that the same as most directors? Like, I love John Carpenter's movies, but even he has some duds. He does. Absolutely. Sean says, look, he had Nightmare on Elm Street and Screen, so everyone overlooks the shite he came up with. That's probably a fair point. Made some right shite, though. R.I.P. Wes. I like that little, you were totally shit, but I'm sorry you're dead. Wes Craven started off rough as a director, but that then got better. Yeah, he did. He did for sure. What does that mean? Dave McRae says, what does that mean he's not a great director? In what sense? Well, I took it to mean overall, Dave. Overall, he's not a great director, but I disagree with it completely. Tony Four Eyes says notoriety doesn't equal great. No, but you can't look. When you look at some of the films that he's, I mean, what he's done for, I mean, you can't say that Elm Street and Scream are badly directed movies. They're really well directed, and they were huge hits, and they changed the genre at their time. Elm Street changed the slasher genre in the 80s. Scream changed the slasher genre in the 90s. Muckman says, I consider Carpenter to be a great director throughout the 70s and 80s. He was. His run from, I don't count Dark Star because I really can't get on board on that, but his run from Assault on Precinct 13 all the way through to Prince of Darkness, let's say, it's just phenomenal. And although he didn't have commercial success, they're terrific movies in there. if he didn't create so much trash. That's the problem. That's the problem. As I said, for every Elm Street, there's a bloody vampire in Brooklyn. Red Eye was good fun. If there was a... Brandon says, if there was a Mount Rushmore of horror... Sorry, something's gone wrong with my screen here. One second. If there was a Mount Rushmore of horror directors, he'd be on it. His films were also much more accessible to audiences across multiple decades. This is a bad take, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Let me just get these super chats here before I lose them. Craven is the horror equivalent of Ridley Scott. There are so many masterpieces and just as many films that don't work. You wouldn't call Ridley bad. No. Not at all. And then there was another super chat. People Under the Stairs. Yeah. One that I watched recently. Only just recently for the first time. Bought it last year and watched it over the last few weeks, actually. Dave says, it depends on what we're measuring. If the measuring stick is variety, well, then no. But if the measuring stick is consistency within one genre, he's up there. He's reinvented it a couple of times. Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Totally agree with that. Leanna has to go. See you later. Thank you, Leanna, for joining us. Good to see you. Let me just go back here. I just missed a few. Red Eye was good also. I think he was a good filmmaker. I would somewhat agree. If you look at his really early work when he stepped out of the horror genre, his movies weren't as successful. Now in the movie genre, he's a legend. Alan says, holy shitballs, Batman. Overall, Craven would be a great director, I think. He did some muck, but hasn't everyone. His great stuff outweighs the mediocre by a distance. I think so as well. True, he was lucky a few times, which makes him bigger than he should have been. However, Last House, Elm Street, and Scream alone would have cemented him as a legendary master of horror. Batchett says, saying that he made shite, so did Carpenter. Is he a shit director? They all have some misses, let's face it. And SA revenge films are always nasty. Yeah, not a subgenre I'm a fan of, I'm afraid. In fact, when we did the... I did a Video Nasties episode back in January. And one of the choices from one of the guests, I think, was Last House on the Left. And I watched it for the first time in a lot of years, and it's really unsettling. It's not a nice film at all. Rob McGregor 11 says People Under the Stairs was fecking amazing, and the swamp creature is too campy. The swamp creature, the swamp thing, you mean? Okay, take care, Liana. Mario Bava had one of the best horror runs. Yeah, quite possibly. Juicebox Willie says Nightmare on Elm Street is one of the most original and terrifying films ever made. I guarantee Freddy gave more kids nightmares than any other horror icon. Don Mack says Wes Craven did so well in The Serpent and the Rainbow at maintaining a serious tone, but then threw it all away in the final scene and went all over the top, Freddy-like in that final scene. I'd have to watch that again. I haven't watched it for years. God, it must be like... When did it come out? Is it like late 80s, early 90s, something? I saw it on VHS. That's how long ago it was. I have a better idea. I'm going to get her some help. Yeah, Elm Street. Surely Garth Marenghi is his most influential horror icon. Myers fan says most horror directors made a load of crap in their later careers and should have retired long ago. Saying that Ridley Scott's been churning out absolute shite for a good decade now. That's a bit unfair. He's still doing bloody huge movies. Ridley Scott has jumped the shark. His last few movies were quite bad. Brandon Collins says Last House, Hills of Eyes, Elm Street, Shocker, Serpent the Rainbow, People Under the Stairs, New Nightmares, Scream, Red Eye. Thank you, Brandon. You reminded me of Shocker there, which I actually think is quite good fun. And Dave says, I agree. I meant the person who posed the question. Look, Wes Craven isn't Hitchcock, but he's not Ed Wood either. No, he isn't. I agree, a real hard hitter. Dag was an amazing human being. Dean, how could I forget about People Under the Stairs? That's solid 4 flicks. Myers fan, yeah. It's good. I enjoyed it. Frank begged me for ages to watch that film, and I just had it on the shelf, and I never got around to watching it until fairly recently. Justin says, if Darren says a movie is unsettling, I can only imagine. Dear God. Remember, he didn't just direct Elm Street, he created the character of Freddy Krueger. That alone might give him a pass on one of the most influential horror directors of this generation. Good point, Dave. Alan says, off tomorrow, but then working straight through till the 23rd. So have a happy Christmas to you, Darren, and all your great community. Brilliant content and nice to have live Thursday back. All the best. There won't be a live next Thursday, unfortunately, but I'm going to do it on Wednesday, I think. It's going to be Wednesday, so keep an eye out for that. I'm surprised Shocker didn't become a franchise. I am too, although it was a little bit too similar to the Freddy thing, and yeah. Huge movies, Darren, but which are you picking up for the collection? Well, I would certainly, I liked Napoleon. There, have that one. There's some epic sequences in Napoleon. Terrific stuff. Serpent the Rainbow is criminally underrated. Pullman's best film. Dag was a character from Darth Place, Garth Marenghi. I can't take People Under the Stairs seriously, says Daz, because they play goofballs in Twin Peaks. Doug Bradley is a horror icon. Is that a hot take? He made Shocker because he felt he screwed on his Elm Street deal. It was an attempt to have a franchise of his own. Yeah, absolutely. Gladiator 2 was a schlocky remake of Gladiator. It's okay. It just goes a bit leans too heavily into CGI in some of the scenes. Dean Maloney says, that's it. To have Elm Street in your mind and put it on film, that's the golden buzzer. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move over to this stream here. Thank you, folks. That's it. That's the hot. That's a difficult one, is that last one. That was probably the top. I wasn't actually going to put it in. Then I was going to put it in the middle somewhere, and I thought, I'll leave that one to the end because that'll get some real debate going. It's been interesting all week reading these that have come through, and there were a few that came through kind of late in the day that I thought, that might have been nice to put that in as well. Maybe I'll do it again in a month or two's time. We'll see. But once I get Room 666 off the ground, it's kind of a similar thing anyway. It's sort of people's hot takes that they want to banish. If you saw the episode Dave and I did, that was just kind of like a trial. And it sort of worked. We were both really pleased with the way it turned out. And like I said, I'm going to make some slight adjustments to it. I want to get some better titling and effects in there when we do banish a film. But also, I'm going to reduce the counter as well to 3 minutes, because 5 minutes is quite a long time. And I think it's probably better if people are under a bit more pressure to kind of deliver an argument. Dean, what's Room 66? Room 66 is a new kind of series that I've started. I've only put one episode out, but it's on my channel at the moment. You'll see it. It's one of the last episodes that I did. It's an episode with me and Dave McRae. Essentially, if you're British, Dean, it's a kind of horror take on Room 101, where guests have to convince me that a popular horror movie is should be banished forever. And I have to come up with a counter argument for that. So it was good fun. And like I say, I've got 2 or 3 guests lined up that are going to come on. Hopefully I'm going to record another episode this weekend. But yeah, around about 50 minutes, an hour long, something like that. 5 movies, 5 80s horror movies. I have a list of 200, which I give out to people. They pick 5 and then we thrash it out. And it's good because you actually, once you get into it, I find that I don't have to do much editing. It kind of flows. If you've got the right guest on, it really flows, and it worked the first time around. Needs a little bit of tightening and like I say, some jazzing up a little bit, but we'll get there. And eventually, I want to move it onto a live show so that we're doing it on a Thursday night. But other people have been asking me to do the 90s and the 70s on the voting and everything. I don't think there's enough films across those decades to do a 10-week series on. So if we do that, it might be a smaller episode, I think. So we'll see. Got lots of ideas. Brian Mack sends in $4.99. Let me just check that I actually did get all of the super chats. Thank you, Dean Maloney, for the $2 super chat, and thank you, Brandon, for the super chats as well. But Brian Mack sends in a $4.99 super chat and says, late to this, but my hot take is that Halloween 6 is the best of the sequels. No. In fact, I'm not going to say too much here because on Room 666, somebody is coming to me with that very same thing. Not Halloween 6, but another Halloween movie that yeah, we'll save it. We'll save it. But I don't agree that, Dean. I'm not a fan of Halloween 6, to be honest. But if you ask me, it should be Halloween. Halloween 2, Halloween 4, or David Gordon Green's Halloween are the better sequels. Hey, Zara says, did I make it in time to find out if The Thing is a Christmas film? That was just bonkers. What were they doing with that? And are they going to sort of, tell us what's happened there? Like, the makers of that documentary are campaigning to get The Thing recognized by Letterboxd and IMDb that it's a Christmas film. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why would you do that? There's nothing remotely Christmas about it, apart from some fucking snow. There's no... I was like, did I miss a Christmas card in the background or a Jingle Bell Rock on the radio or something like that? Why would you even begin that argument? There's no argument to be had there at all. Just weird. I'm guessing that they gave up on the idea because they probably got so much shit. It wasn't worth continuing with it. And the poll that you had to go on, the link that you went on, didn't tell you what the results were. It just sort of said, enter your email address here and we'll be in touch. Yeah, be in touch about their documentary, I think. That was it. So it felt like a bit of a scam to get people signed up to their mailing list. But anyway. Okay, so got some content being recorded tomorrow. Got a double episode being recorded on Sunday with Nigel of our best soundtracks. You won't want to miss that because he has some insane soundtracks, some great horror stuff on vinyl. I'm gonna pale into the dust with the kind of things that he's got, because he's shown me some of his stuff before. He has got some amazing stuff. So we're going to do our favorite soundtracks over two episodes. Recording with Barry, Room 666, and lots of other stuff as well. So expect quite a lot between now and Christmas. And hopefully a live next Wednesday. So there's that to look forward to too. Thank you guys for joining me. This was a lot of fun. Been going nearly 2 hours. Wow. Really enjoyed this. As always, if you can afford me a subscribe and a like, that would be great. And I'll look forward to seeing you all really soon. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.